Hello, everyone. There are three ways that two celestial bodies can get into contact. Well, the most obvious one is to form an aspect between the two. And if you look at the various celestial objects, the various planets, asteroids, centaurs, some can work very well, very nicely. They have a flowing relationship like Sun and Jupiter or Mars and Jupiter. And some of them have problems, to say the least. Well, if you know anyone who has a tight Mars Moon aspect, even if it's a flowing one, you can see that they are prone to hysterics, but actually simply because what you feel is that Mars is attacking your soul, and even if it's a sextile or a trine, there might be some misunderstandings between the two, to say the least. And if it's not a flowing aspect, but a square is a high impact aspect that is constantly giving us like everyday strifes and problems. Well, if you have many squares in your own chart, you know what I'm talking about. It's an interesting thing that just to show you what it is. I don't actually have a book at the moment on my desk, but anyhow, here's the problem with a square. You either see this angle or you see this angle. So whenever something is at right angle to one another, you don't see the full picture ever, because you are unable to see how thick a book is or what the title is. This one doesn't have a title because it's my calendar. But anyhow, so that's why a square is giving you everyday high impact negative energies, problems, clashes, and things like that. And if it's in your own psyche, it could be quite disturbing. But anyhow, so that's the first relationship between two planets, first potential relationship. The second one is when they are in mutual reception. What does it mean? Simply that traditionally the two luminaries occupy or rule one sign each, and the rest of the planets rule two signs each. And in karmic astrology, each sign is ruled by a separate entity. So Virgo is ruled by Chiron, Libra is ruled by Trans-Pluto, and Scorpio is ruled by Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. And well, the rest is kind of traditional, although so by today, I think everyone accepts that Uranus rules Aquarius and Neptune rules Pisces, but occasionally, originally it wasn't like this the case. So in our case, in karmic astrology, it's much easier to be in mutual reception, because for example, if you have let's say a Leo Chiron and a Virgo Sun, these two planets will be in mutual reception according to karmic rules. And it's an interesting relationship because one rules the other. And to understand how it works, usually traditional astrologers say that the stronger planet gets the upper hand, but it's not always like this. Look around, Vietnam was able to defeat the United States, and look at the size and look at the potential, the military potential, and still it occurred. So it's always better to actually look at the whole case and try to assess how they work. But it's like one rules the other rules the one back, and it's a funny relationship, let's put it this way. And then the third potential relationship is when two planets don't have an aspect between the two, but the third planet gets at the midpoint between the two and actually links the two together. And on the 16th of April, we will have such a relationship, because the sun will be at the exact midpoint of Eris and Astraea. Now, in karmic astrology, of course, because it's karmic, the topic karma is quite important. And in order to just assess it a little bit further, there are two words that most people mix up. And the two words are karma and destiny. And to be able to distinguish the two, I usually teach something very simple to my beginners, that the difference is that if you have a nice plate of food, Karma is the day after, the next day, what happens in your stomach and in your intestines. Okay, that's karma. And destiny is before you actually start eating it, the dish before you, and it smells very nicely, and it's delicious, and you just delve into it. So that's destiny. That's how we look at it. I hope I didn't gross you out with the example, but I know that this is something that you will understand. And of course, both are important. You need to digest your food, otherwise it doesn't become the fuel for your life. So karma is very important, but it is the day after and not the day before, or the couple of minutes before actually digesting something. And in karmic astrology, of course, the two main karmic characters, when we look at the planets, is Chiron and Chiron and Saturn. Saturn is the lord of karma. It gives you lectures and lessons and duties and chores and burdens and baggages. And Chiron is our karmic wounds, which can turn into two different ways. Either they can draw into phobias and insecurities and things that prevent you from actually living out your destiny, or they, as a result, our most important traits and talents also grow out of our wounds. It's very interesting how you can actually have both. With the phobias, most of the time, you turn to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and there are methods how to diminish these phobias. The problem is that after a while, if you have an all of a sudden impulse or experience, you can actually fall back into the whole trap. Anyhow, so the two karma breakers in karmic astrology are Eris and Astraea. Eris is the outward karma breaker. It's drastically altered outward circumstances. And in Greek mythology, it's an important figure. She's a demon, the demon of discord and strife, because the Greeks knew perfectly well that normal human beings, rational human beings, don't fall in love. That's a totally irrational thing. For this, you need a love potion, or you need the arrow of Cupid. So you need magic to be, it is a magical thing to actually fall in love. And so is wars. Wars are totally irrational things, and they are always negative sum total. They produce negative sum totals, even for the ones who win, because they lose a portion of their new upcoming generations, because they lose a lot in manpower, in economic wealth, if you look at the everyday people. So it's always a negative sum total. And again, wars are completely irrational. So you need some kind of outward vehicle force in order to enter into war. And that's Eris, because Eris caused strife and discord among the people. And when this occurred, then Ares, the war god, could come in and could actually produce a full-blown war. And so that's one karma breaker. And it's actually funny because if you consider the word karma breaker, it means to break old embedded karma. You might wonder how on earth could Eris, such a negative figure, become a karma breaker? Well, because people tend to get ensconced into their ways, and we don't like changes. Most of us, the older you get, the less you like changes. So what happens? You don't evolve. You get stuck in your normal everyday life, and then an outward karma breaker, Eris, discord or strife, just pushes you out of your nice little harmony and actually forces you to act or to react or to evolve. And the other karma breaker, Astraea, is something that comes from within. Astraea is Zeus's daughter, who first, of course, lives with the other gods on Mount Olympus, but doesn't like it at all, because she thinks that the life of gods are totally irrelevant and futile. So she moves to live with the people, and actually pays attention to them and takes part in their everyday chores and everything. But after reaching a certain point in the so-called Iron Age, she realizes that mankind is totally hopeless and horrible. So she leaves them. She's the last of the gods to leave mankind, and goes up to Mount Olympus once again. But again, she realizes that the gods haven't evolved at all and they are the same. So she doesn't want to be with them any longer. And she asks her father to put her on into the heavens, into the stars. And she becomes the Virgo, the Virgin, the celestial Virgin, who keeps the scales in her hands. So she becomes some sort of justice, Justitia symbol as well. And in karmic astrology, Astraea is the inner karma breaker. When you are actually wanting change, you stay in a situation as long as you can and as long as it is feasible, and try to maximize its impact. But then comes a point when you need to change, and that's what you can do when you have a strong Astraea. You stay, but then you move. You have the ability to move out of a debilitating or bad or sad situation. So those are the two karma breakers. A couple of days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, they were conjunct in Eris, and you can find the video if you want to see it. But let's take a look at the present situation. And as I said, on April the 16th at 5:11 a.m. London, the sun will be at the exact midpoint of Eris and Astraea. And actually, it's a very nice midpoint structure, not just that, but just to very briefly, let's take a look at the London chart. Neptune is rising with Pisces. On the descendant, you have Ceres, kind of conjunct with the vertex, which is the point of no free will. And besides the sun's midpoint structure, which we're going to look at it, there's also another midpoint structure. Uranus is at the exact midpoint of Mercury and Juno. Juno is the wife archetype, the first lady archetype, committed relationships and also covenants. And Mercury is, of course, is communication skills and thinking methods. And Uranus, its higher octave, is at the midpoint of Mercury, Juno. So you can actually change the way how you talk to your spouse, or how you negotiate covenants or a contract or any kind of a relationship, really. And also the moon has reached Saturn. 4 or 5 days ago, it was in Capricorn, and it actually produced a crown with the mystic rectangle between Saturn and trans-Pluto and the nodal axis. We are going to revisit this because now the moon has reached Saturn. But let's concentrate on this portion of the chart, which is a very interesting midpoint structure. And if you take a look, it really looks like a pyramid, on the top of which is the sun. So I could have actually depicted this as a midpoint tree. And usually this is what I do, but for some reason I use the equation sign here. So anyhow, so the sun is at the midpoint of Eris and Astraea, effectively joining the two karma breakers. Of course, they are still quite conjunct. So this is not technically a stellium, because for the stellium, you need 3 planets in the same sign. And here you only have the sun and Jupiter. Those are effectively planets. Chiron is a centaur, and the rest are asteroids. And then, of course, the North Node is a point, plus it is already in Taurus. Anyhow, so this is the midpoint structure. So the sun is also at the midpoint of Jupiter and Vesta. Jupiter is expansion and optimism, and Jupiter, of course, enlarges everything it touches. But Jupiter is also the high priest And Vesta, the focusing principle, is the high priestess. So here you have the high priest, high priestess energy, which gives us sacred energy at this moment in time. And of course, there is the Chiron North Node midpoint. That's the sun is also at the Chiron North Node midpoint. Chiron is our karmic wounds. The North Node is our chosen destiny. And the sun highlights, illuminates, and also joins the two. So for us to understand both our wounds and which may prevent us to do our destiny. So that's a very, very powerful midpoint structure. And this gives me occasion to look at further midpoints. And what I decided to do is to look at the rest of the personal planets. The other luminary, of course, is the moon. And here, this is the further midpoint, not the farther midpoint, not the closer one. But it's an equally important midpoint. A circle always has two direct midpoints. And actually, because it's not a circle, but it is a sphere, you have the two other direct midpoints, which look like indirect midpoints because they kind of fall beside the planet itself. So here is another direct midpoint, but farther from the moon itself. And this is, the moon is defined by Ceres and Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is the strong feminine who has stamina and endurance and the will to go back to the Garden of Evil and rectify the fact that Eve wasn't given a soul. And so this is the third turning point of the Lilith myths. I have a couple of videos out there if you want to get acquainted with Lilith. So she's the one who is the strong, powerful feminine. And then Ceres is another strong, powerful feminine. Of course, she's the nurturing principle. It's like a second moon, really, because the moon is, besides being the mother, also your spiritual essence, your emotions, your subconscious, a number of other things. But Ceres is the nurturing principle and is linked to nurturing, mothering instincts. And it's actually the name Ceres is the where the thing cereal is derived from. So she's the goddess of grains and cereals. So that's two strong feminine linked by the moon. And let's take a look at Mercury. And Mercury has two powerful midpoints here. One is it's at the midpoint of Venus and Jupiter. So big luck and little luck, the two lucky planets. But you can also delineate this type of midpoint at Mercury, understanding and communication, joins money and harmony with big things or expensive things. And the other midpoint is Saturn and Pallas Athena. So Mercury actually is also linking Saturn, karmic destiny, and also our chores and duties and the foundation of things, and Pallas Athena, wisdom. We might have the turning point in the war. This is what I suspect. It's quite funny how this leakage occurred and how they immediately, within 24 to 48 hours, they found the perpetrator who leaked documents. I think this was very deliberate. Actually, they allowed this guy to do it. He did it, yeah, of course, but they kind of handed him the opportunity. Because, I mean, think about it. We still, to this day, we still don't know who killed Kennedy, who murdered Kennedy. We still don't know a couple of other things, how Epstein committed suicide in a maximum security prison cell. And we don't know a couple of other things. So the FBI, it doesn't seem to be very, very keen on highlighting or understanding or uncovering certain things, whereas it is very, very keen to uncover certain less important things. So that's bullshit. And excuse my language. Anyhow, so that's the Mercury midpoint right there. Big money is involved, and some consideration, wise consideration about foundations. Let's translate it this way. And then Venus. Now, here Venus is defined by a midpoint between Mars and Vesta. Vesta is the focusing principle, Mars is our will. So in order to be happy, harmonious, in order to make money, in order to have a stable well-being, you need to focus Vesta on Mars, on your will, and how to exercise the will, and maybe also war, because Mars, of course, is the war lord. Now, this particular midpoint structure is also a configuration, because here you have a docile triangle, because there's a Vesta Venus docile and a Venus Mars docile, 36 degrees each, and Mars and Vesta are linked by a quintile. And in such cases, we always need to delineate it accordingly. So many configurations are also midpoint structures. So is a T-square, an exact T-square. So is a any kind of triangle really is a midpoint structure, where you have isosceles triangles, where you have the equal portions there. So, but we never actually delineate it as a midpoint structure. We delineate it as the triangle, the type of triangle it forms. And in the case of the quintile series, what's really fascinating is the fact that no matter how many quintiles and deciles and biquintiles and trideciles you have, those are the main four aspects of the quintile series, which always denote various types of talent and professionalism. Decile is professionalism in everyday life, that is shown by your skills, let's say, that others admire. The quintile is ingenuousness. The tridecile is anything that is manifesting in altered states of consciousness, for instance, talents, musical talent, artistic talents. And the biquintile is a talent that is available for you throughout a whole incarnation cycle. But the problem with these very nice aspects is that they don't have energy in them. So they sometimes don't manifest, or they manifest in a very subtle way. And even the native may be unaware of their utility, of their merit. And whenever they form a triangle or any kind of structure, they will be able to manifest quite nicely. At the apex of this triangle is Venus, harmony and also money. And then Mars, this is our last midpoint structure. Mars is at the midpoint of Ceres and Astraea. Now, if you look closely, you might say that actually Astraea and Ceres have a quincunx, an inconjunct between the two. To my mind, to my taste, it's a little bit too wide, but yes, you could actually say that this is actually a quincunx, but still Mars is still at the midpoint. So and the remaining aspects are not forming. So this is not a configuration. It is a midpoint structure. And Mars, the warlord, is joined by Ceres, the nurturing principle, and Astraea, the karma breaker. And don't forget, this is a Cancer Mars, which is a domestic Mars, let's put it this way. And then, of course, let's revisit the mystic rectangle that has been there and will be there for a couple of more days. After that, it moves out of orb, because any configuration that has points and not radiating objects in it has only a 1.5 degree orb, and it's just barely there. But the moon, which is able to highlight and illuminate from an inner viewpoint, the whole structure, has just reached Saturn. So again, this mystic rectangle between the nodal axis, which is karma and destiny. Karma we bring in, karmic skills we bring in from previous incarnation and chosen destiny tasks. And then Saturn and Astraea, Trans-Pluto. Trans-Pluto is the dimension jump and channeling, and Saturn is the earth plane and chores and problems and problem-solving methods. And the moon is actually highlighting it. The Saturn will be in Pisces for another 2.5 years. It's not very happy in Pisces, in a water sign. It needs to structure emotions. Now, how can you create structures in a water? It's not very easy. So that's it for the 16th. And those are the midpoint structures, which are very, very important in karmic astrology because it gives you another angle, another layer of understanding. Sometimes you feel that there must be some sort of connection between two celestial objects, and you can't find it either in mutual reception or in a traditional aspect. Then look at the midpoints because they might tell you the story that you're looking for. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.